These last few Sundays in ordinary time, the ones just before Advent, seem to me to be like the doom and gloom Sundays. All this dark talk of end times. And if we let them, today's readings can affirm this feeling. Perhaps we can dare to take a slightly different view. We don't often hear readings from the book of Daniel, which was likely written in the 2nd century BCE in order to strengthen and encourage the Israelite people who were undergoing bitter persecution. It wasn't written by a person named Daniel, but was written about a visionary named Daniel. The first part of the book tells of Daniel and his companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and their strong witness to their faith. The second part tells of Daniel's visions, and it is from this part that our first reading comes. In these visions, like the other apocalyptic writings, such as Revelation in the New Testament, there is a strong theme of pattern and promise. Pattern. Human beings and their kingdoms become violent beasts when they glorify their own power, when they redefine right and wrong, and they don't acknowledge God as their true God. And promise, one day God will confront the beast, rescue God's people and God's world. We see that in this brief section. The pattern: it shall be a time of unsurpassed distress since nations began. Promise, but the wise shall shine brightly, and those who lead the many to justice shall shine like stars forever. We see this same pattern and promise format in today's gospel. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. If we read this passage as a metaphor, it highlights some of the deep truths of the current political climate. In many corners of our country, compassion has been darkened, kindness has lost its brightness, empathy has fallen from the sky, and who we are meant to be as a community has been greatly shaken. It is easy to feel like the end times aren't so very far away. Yet Jesus tells us that exactly when we feel deep despair and this sense of foreboding, that is when the promised one is near, at the gates. The fig tree will bloom. This passage has often been interpreted to speak of the end of the world and the second coming of Christ. But what if it was never meant to predict the end of time? Can we imagine for a moment, instead of prophesying a second coming of Jesus, this passage is actually a roadmap for hope? Maybe Jesus is trying to remind us of something we need to hear when we are at our lowest, when we feel the most despair, the most fear, the most anxiety. That's when God is closest to us. That is the promise part. That is when we are least alone. That is when the promised one is right at our door. It's similar to the promise in Daniel. We can have hope when we remember that even in trying times, especially in the trying times, the great hope bearer is right here at our gates, knocking at the door of our hearts. And may we have the wisdom and the courage to open the door.